All right, we are live. And give it a second just to make sure it's rolling here. All right. All right. So I'm just gonna do a quick intro, and I'll kind of turn it over to some question and answer. Welcome everybody for the second week of our throws conference. Big thank you to MF Athletic for sponsoring this event, and the National Throws Coaches Association and Rob Sorsa for helping us get the word out on this. We're talking with Tom Walsh today. We're really excited for this conversation. I think he's going to be able to share some of his experiences and how he thinks about the shot put, and as he's developed as an elite shot putter. And for those of you that, if any of you don't know, Tom is a 3-time world champion, Olympic bronze medalist, 2017 and 2018 New Zealand Sportsman of the Year, and owns the number 5 all-time mark in the shot put. So welcome, Tom, and we are gonna ask you some questions. And first, I guess I would love to just hear a little bit about your background, how you got into the sport, how you what sports you played growing up, what your sports were like in your family, and kind of how you fell into shot putting, and how you developed early.
Yeah, it was. It's a long story too. It's not just a 5-second one, but it kind of started. I did athletics. I think when I was probably 10, 11, 12, and kind of like most kids probably did all events, and therefore just kind of just try different stuff all the time here and there, and just started to see what I was good at. But then I went away from it for a few years, and the whole time I was also playing rugby and cricket, which is 2 sports in America that aren't very popular in America, but are popular in around the world in different countries. And of course in New Zealand, everyone knows the All Blacks. So as a young kid, I wanted to grow up and be an All Black and play for our national team and things like that. So that was one of the big sports as a young kid, and that kind of brought me through into high school. And I was probably about 15, 16 when I really started picking the shot put up a little bit more seriously. But when I say seriously, I'm talking about maybe once or twice a week training sessions. And I think at that point in time, I was only competing about 3 or 4 times a year. And as bad as it sounds, I was only really doing it because, well, you got school sports day off when we did athletics. You got regionals off, which was another day. You got South Islands off, which is another 2 days, and then you got nationals off. So here's the 5 events that I was doing, and I suffer from dyslexia, so schooling wasn't necessarily my favourite thing. So that was probably more why I was pushed towards playing sport and also doing athletics, was because I just loved getting out of the classroom and being active and physical. And around that time, I was actually doing reasonably well. I was winning South Island championships and then national championships. But saying that, in New Zealand, it's not necessarily sometimes the hardest thing to do. So I didn't really think of athletics or as shot put as a direction that I was going to go. I was still madly in love with cricket and rugby, was my other 2 sports, and they were the ones that really were the big ones that I thought I was going to do. And then I left school, and you got to remember, at this point in time, I still hadn't touched weights. I hadn't touched weights for rugby. I hadn't touched weights for cricket. I hadn't touched weights for throwing. And so I left school at age 17, almost 18, and moved to Christchurch and started a building apprenticeship. And from there, so I was working 5 days a week. I was also still playing rugby and cricket, and also doing athletics on the side. So it was a pretty busy kind of schedule for me, but I loved it. I did all the sports because I really enjoyed it. And then I think it was my first year out of high school. I went to World Juniors, which is under 20, where they throw the 6K. And Rob's laughing. I can see this now. But at that World Juniors, I thought I had a chance of getting a medal. I didn't really know if I could win, but I thought I might have had a chance of getting a medal. And I bombed out. I went from throwing 20 metres in the warm-up area, which was about the mark for a medal, to throwing like 1780. I was like, oh, this is shit. And then at the same time, Jack O'Gill. Of course, most people know Jack O'Gill, and if you don't know Jack O'Gill, he pretty much holds all the youth and junior shot put records in the world, and is from New Zealand as well. And he managed to win. He won world under 20s at 16. So of course, everybody was praising Jacko and just going, "This is great, this is fantastic, Jacko. You're the guy. This is going to be amazing. You're going to throw shot put for New Zealand for the rest of your life. You're going to be our guy." And I thought, like hell, I'm actually going to start doing a bit more stuff with shot put, and I was still playing cricket in Christchurch after that. But I thought, well, actually, hold on. Now I'm going to start lifting a little bit, and now I'm actually going to start throwing a little bit more than 2 or 3 days a week, and started to get a little bit more serious about that. And then that was the first part of me going, right, I'm not actually going to. I'm starting to move away from the thought of playing rugby or cricket. And then, I was still playing rugby and cricket up until the age of about 21. I think it's very important for just athletes in general's development to play different sports, for so many different reasons: movement patterns, reaction times, and also socially. It's pretty important to have a good social kind of life and for your own well-being. And I think that's where sports can help with that. And also, I strongly believe that too many young kids try and become professional too young. And I know it's slightly different in America with trying to get scholarships to go to university and therefore taking a lot of financial burden off your parents or off whoever is looking after you. And I fully understand that, but I didn't become professional or even try and become professional until I was probably 20. And I think you've got to enjoy the sport. You've got to enjoy going to training. You've got to enjoy competing. And if you're not enjoying it, it's just a hard slog to, get up for training every day and put your body through the hurt that it needs to go through to do it. So for me, specialisation early, and we have the same problem in New Zealand too, that, a lot of kids are pushed towards one sport very early because they say, well, you can't play a winter sport and a summer sport anymore, which I think is absolute rubbish. I think there's still time. I think it's great for the kids again to do that stuff. And so anyway, that kind of brings me to like 2013. And I go to Europe and I was still playing 2013. What was I? I was 21, and I was still playing cricket. Had stopped playing rugby at that point in time, and this was Moscow World Champs. And I thought, well, I'll try. I should be able to go and qualify. And so I go over to Europe, and in the second or third comp, I throw 20 metres and 7 centimetres. And I go, well, that's not too bad. It's a new PB for me. The qualifying standard was 20 metres and 10 centimetres. I'm like, okay, I've got a few more comps to go. This will be easy. I'll nail it pretty easily. How world has changed in men's shot put though by that too. 20 metres now is like throwing 19 metres. Anyway, so I go there and in the second or third last comp I throw 20 metres and 9 centimetres, and I do everything to try and get that 1 extra centimetre. I kick the stop board backwards as far as I can get it. I talk to the officials nicely. I try to just do everything, and just they wouldn't give it to me. I was in Switzerland. They like doing things, to a T and sorting it. But anyway, that was the right decision. They definitely made the right decision. I tried my hardest to get an extra centimetre out of them. But anyway, so I missed going to World Championships by 1 centimetre. And of course, at that point in time, I'm like, well, this is shit. I've wasted 5 weeks in Europe, a lot of my parents' money at that point in time. I thought maybe this isn't for me. But then, as I got home and as I talked to my people that I respect around me, which are my parents, my coach at that time, they were talking about, well, no, look, you've made so great progress. You've done stuff in New Zealand that only one other person has ever done before you, which is Jacko. Why don't we just try and do this a little bit more and maybe see what you can really do? How about we give it another 6 months and see what happens? And so that was the point in time where I go, well, stuff this. Like, I'm actually going to stop playing cricket. I was 21, so I kind of played cricket for long enough. And that was, to be honest, that was getting a little bit worse. So I wasn't putting the time and effort into it. And so then I go to, 6 months later, I go to World Indoors in Sopot. And after putting kind of all my eggs in one basket at the age of 21, starting to lift properly, getting some more advice around gym stuff, mental skills, around, diet stuff, all this kind of stuff, and actually kind of going all out. I managed to come third at my first ever world champs or indoor world champs, wearing the black singlet, which was something pretty cool. And from then on out, it was I just hit it at the right time, and I went boom, 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 and it's kind of just kept going that way for a long time. But it's amazing that what can happen if you surround yourself with people that don't necessarily want the best for you as an athlete, but they want the best for you as a person. And I think that's one thing that I've been very lucky with my whole career. And it's been different people too. Obviously, my parents the whole way through, but my first ever coach, Ian Baird, was a hugely positive person and would almost lie to you about how good you could be, but to give you the confidence to try it. And even after moving on from Ian, Dale, who coaches me now, and so forth, it's just having the right people around you that are going to be there, whether it goes well for you or whether it doesn't, is a hugely important thing. And it's kind of got me to being the athlete I am now. Hopefully, I've dribbled on there a little bit, but that's kind of where the sport kind of started, and kind of now how I kind of got to the professional scene, I guess.
No, you didn't drone on at all. That was great. No, I think amen to the doing a lot of stuff early. I think the more people hear that, the better. that's awesome. Now, people may not realize, you talk about doing a lot when you're younger, and I think people may not realize that up until very recently, you've still done a lot of other stuff. You used to work full time as a home builder in addition to your training full time and competing and all that. How did that experience affect your development, your career, your view of the sport?
I think for me it was very important. It was like people going to college, right? People go to college to get a degree and to have something therefore after they finish sport, if that's what they want to do. So that's what building was. And as I covered earlier, I suffer from dyslexia, so reading and spelling isn't my strongest suit. So that's why, and I've always been a hands-on guy. I grew up on a farm, so I always did a lot of farm work with my father, and always liked doing stuff with my hands. So that was a kind of natural progression to go towards building. And I did it right until, when was it? Probably 2017. It was actually 2017. I did it until after the World Championships. I built my own house and then kind of called it quits after that. But I think it was a good outlet, because I go to the building site, and to be honest, the guys don't want to know how training's going. They want to know three things. They want to know how much you drank on Saturday night, how fast you drove your car, and did you get a girl? That's all that matters on the building site. And so it was just great, refreshing to kind of, even if I had the shittest day at training, you turn up to the work site and they'd give you shit about something, and you kind of remember that it's not all seriousness. Like training is never a straight line, right? You're always going up and down, and that kind of gave me some context around how important just kind of letting stuff go can be, and and how beneficial it can be actually for the next session to get something better out of that because of it.
That's awesome. And continuing with the doing, having a man of many talents, you now have your own company that you're running. In addition to your training, how did that come about, and how is that running? How do you make time for that?
Yeah, well, I guess for people who don't know, that we sell changeable weight shot puts, and there's 3 or 4 different kinds of them. So we're very happy and very proud of our product. We believe it's the best training shot put around. There will be other equipment added to our catalogues shortly, so stay tuned. But the whole journey started years and years and years ago, probably around, I would say 2010, 11, 12, where my father read an article about throwing a certain weight shot, let's just say 10 metres. And then as soon as you get that shot over 10 metres, you put a little bit more weight in it. And then you work your way up into 10 metres again, and then you change it again, so forth, so forth. So it kind of started like that. And then when I started travelling a little bit more, probably around 2012, 13, 14, it became apparent that I throw a lot of off-weight shots. I throw a lot of lighter stuff for speed and rhythm stuff, and then some heavy stuff, obviously for feeling some positions, strengthening of hands and fingers and so forth. So it was always important for me to have a different weighted shot puts when I travelled around the world. And so that's kind of where there was a few, different versions of the shot put that had come before, I guess, the one you see now, which is a perfectly balanced shot put through the 6 or 7 weight changes that it has. And has made, to be honest, my life travelling and a lot of other professional throwers and college athletes' lives a lot easier, because you can change it on the spot just like that from a 6.5 kg shot, which is, Rob, how heavy is that? Or pounds? How many pounds is that? I don't speak pounds.
What is it? I've got it muted, but
yeah, 6.15
K is 14.2 pounds.
There you go. So, so you can change it pretty quickly from a 6.5 to a 7.5 kg shot. And I believe personally that it's helped me training. It's also helped my finger and arm health, because having an off-weight shot put can be quite detrimental, especially as you move up in your career and start applying more pressure through the hand and the wrist. So that's kind of where the whole story kind of started, and has kind of been a long process with Ryan Whiting as well, who's part of the company, and he's really the guy who said, actually, this is a product that good that we need to get it out there to other throwers, and other throwers can benefit from it, because originally it wasn't designed for commercial selling and use, and it was really only for me, and then Ryan thought that it was such a great idea that we should try and get it going. And we've been open now for a little bit over a year, and look, it's been some challenging times, that's for sure. I think every business that starts up learns a lot more than what they there's a lot more out there to learn, and you never know what you don't know, and it turns out I don't know a lot. So it's been quite interesting learning, one, about how colleges work and how they buy equipment and so forth, and also just about marketing it, dealing with engineering firms who make it for you, and then graphic designers who design stuff for you, and websites and pictures, and it's kind of been quite eye-opening. And I've always said that ideally we want Walsh Shot to be around for a long, long time, but also at the same time it's a learning curve for me. It's a learning curve for Ryan, and it's always good when you're learning about new stuff and it's challenging every day, because when you think you got it sorted and you've had a great month, the next month's not always the same. So I'm sure Rob and MF can talk about that as a business, that things always change and people always want something different.
Awesome. And just so that give a shout out to you, it's wallshot.com that people can at the very least check it out and see what you guys are all about.
Yeah, and check out social media too, Wallshot on social media, and there's some photos and videos and so forth up of the shop.
Awesome. And on a related note, you're juggling a lot of pieces. What's your key to balancing your time between competing, sponsorship, travel, your company, your family, sponsorship commitments?
Yeah. So I think what New Zealand does really well is, I'll touch on sponsorship first, is that New Zealand as a country sponsors their athletes from businesses really well. So I always give the American boys a bit of stick about this, and they're a bit jealous. But I've probably got 5 or 6 decent sized sponsorship deals in companies. Toyota's one, Fonterra, which produces 1/3 of the milk in the world, is another. A major bank in New Zealand is another one. So I've got some really good sponsors, and New Zealand does really great as a country to get behind the athletes and help them make a living from the sport that aren't All Blacks, because the All Blacks are getting paid all the money, but I'm here on the side that, and don't get me wrong, prize money is not too bad, and Nike's not too bad either, but having those other few sponsorship deals on the side is really helpful to just not have to worry about a few more things, and knowing that you've got a little bit more of a steady income. But anyway, it is quite tricky, because I'm away from home about 200 days a year. So balancing sponsorship with family life with my girlfriend Dana, and also just jobs to do around the place and making sure the house is looking nice, and then also throwing shot is tough. But I think the one thing that I keep saying, that most of this stuff falls down if you don't look after yourself. If you don't look after your mental health, and then your relationships on top of that. So obviously the most important relationship for me is looking after Dana, my girlfriend, and then obviously my next one is my dog Ripper. But I think first of all, you look after yourself, your mental well-being, and making sure that's in the right spot. And then obviously your most important relationships, whether it's your mother, your father, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever it is. And then you have a chance to at least, be present in training, or be present in sponsorship things, or and do those things really well. Because most of the other stuff will fall away if I don't look after me. If I turn into a shitty person to be around, Rob won't want to talk to me every 2 or 3 weeks, and Dana won't want to talk to me, and I'll lose mates and so forth. So you've got to look after yourself first, and make sure that you're looking after your mental well-being, and especially in a time like this at the moment, where everybody is struggling to some degree. It's pretty important to make sure that you're doing the things that make you happy. And sometimes they might have to be slightly different than what you're used to. But as long as you're doing stuff that brings joy to your life, then you should be somewhat okay.
Awesome. It seems like a great pivot point. We're all kind of doing things a little bit differently than we normally might. And especially in the elite athletics world, the Olympics have been shifted a little later. And your training even just is kind of going to be a lot different. And how has that affected you, and how are you kind of dealing with that, and finding balance with that new routine?
Oh, look, it's been pretty tough, for sure, and pretty much every athlete in the world has not been able to train as normal because of COVID-19. So it's I think the toughest part for me is probably not knowing exactly what is going to happen. There is still talk of Diamond Leagues going ahead, and other competitions. I'm not sure to what level, but in August, September, October this year. But they still don't know if that's going to happen. So the hardest thing is actually planning towards something. So you don't know actually what you're working towards. And obviously having that big carrot out in front of you of the Olympic Games, it's very easy to be motivated, and have something to strive for. But now, like not knowing what to work for, it's just you've got to try and ratchet it back. And rather than always being focused on a comp you're trying to get to or something like that, now you go, well, it's more about how you talk about it now, right? So for me, rather than going, oh, this is shit, I don't have any, I'm not sure if I'm going to have any comps this year, I've moved the Olympic Games, rah. That's pretty negative, right? And it's easy to get caught in that. But I think if you flip it and say, right, well, I don't have any comps this year, that's okay. But now because of that, I've got 9 months of stuff things that I haven't had time to in the past, address, sort out, injuries that I can sort out and stuff like that. And I think that's a really good place to look at it from is trying to flip it on its head and go, how can I make the best out of this situation? And for me, we've used this time to address a few sacrum issues that I've had, a few shoulder issues that I've had. They haven't been like life-ending or anything like that, but they've been niggling wee injuries, which I've had for a few years, and I think it's just a great time to address them and sort them out.
Very cool. Almost going back to your roots and being a little more general for now, right?
Yeah, indeed.
And you're kind of heading into winter too. We're coming out of it, and you're don't mean to bring you down, but and is that a big part of adjusting your training? And I know you normally spend some time in the States during the winter, or
yeah, completely. That's why my beard's got a bit longer, my hair's got a little bit longer to handle the cold that's just about to come down in New Zealand. But it's definitely a big change. I don't think I've been in New Zealand in a full winter since probably 2012. So that's 8-9 years of being away. And so yes, you're quite right. I do come over. I was actually meant to leave on Sunday to Athens, Georgia, and as I train there in the summertime down south, of course, and it's a very different climate than what I'm just about to go into. But we're pretty lucky. We're getting a full indoor throws area built for us as of now, which is pretty cool. And so we'll be able to throw indoors, even when it's freezing cold outside, which will be great. But I think what we've already talked about in New Zealand, and the joys of having, Valerie Adams, Jack O'Gill, and Maddie Wu, and also Ryan Ballantyne. Some people might not know those last two, but Maddie Wu is another female shot putter who's 21 who went to World Champs last year for us, and Ryan Ballantyne's a 21-year-old guy who's thrown 1980, so he's getting up there too. So we've got 5 pretty good throwers in a small country, and we're already talking about putting on a wee indoor series for shot putters at least in New Zealand, and that can give us something to aim towards, something to freshen up, and something to kind of get after, and I guess try to bring live sport back to the rest of the world, which we're very lucky in New Zealand at the moment. We've had no cases for the last 2 or 3 days, which is really good, and so we might get out of this whole thing a little bit earlier than maybe you guys. But the joys of being a small island nation in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, our cross country coach at Williams is actually taking a sabbatical in New Zealand right now, and it's like picked a better place. Yeah,
nice.
That's awesome. Well, we're getting a lot of questions on training on YouTube. I definitely have some questions on training too. We'd love if you would walk us through maybe a typical week. I know it changes throughout the year, but if you take take your average week and kind of walk us through some of the things you do. How much you're throwing, how much you're lifting, what do some of those things look like? We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, cool. So I'll run you through a day roughly first, and then we can kind of go out from there. So most days I wake up about 6:30ish in the morning. I'll come straight out here into the lounge and do a half an hour kind of stretching circuit, prehab kind of circuit to address any issues that I may have. And then that runs for obviously half an hour, as I said. Have breakfast, and I'll be jumping in the truck and going straight to training by about 7:30, 8 o'clock most mornings. And that's sometimes if it's 7:30, I'll have an hour appointment with my physio or trainer to address some tightness or other things that we've been working on. And then usually it starts with a throw session, which goes for about an hour and a half. That includes warm up and all my throws. And in a typical throw session, I usually have about 3 or 4 half turns, and then I have 8 full throws, and that's my throw session done just like that. Of course, before that, I obviously have a decent warm up. We usually play a warm up game of some sorts to try and keep it fun and a little bit different. And then obviously I do some finger stuff to warm up my fingers and shoulders and stuff before I start throwing. And obviously I do some drills before that too. So it's not just boom, boom, boom. It's probably about 45 minutes of throwing and 45 minutes of getting ready for it. And I think as I get older, it might become an hour of getting ready and half an hour of throwing and so forth. So so that's kind of the throwing, and that usually takes me from about 9 o'clock to 10:30. And then if I'm lifting, I'll do a lifting session that will take me from 11 o'clock after I've had a bit of a snack to, let's say, 1 or 1:30, depending on how big the lifting session is. And then I'm usually home or off to a sponsor's thing by 2 o'clock, which is pretty good. But then saying that, coming home, if I come home, it's all about recovery, right? So it's not about doing, going out and playing 18 holes of golf every day. Like as Rob and I do play a bit of golf, but you try and pick the days that work better for that than others. So. And I also think it's important to have other things in your life than, as we've talked about, than just throwing shots. So that's where golf comes in a little bit. So that's kind of a day roughly. But usually, if we talk Monday, I'll have a physio session in the morning. I'll have a throw and I'll have a lift usually. Tuesdays usually the same. So I have a throw and a lift. Wednesday is a circuit day. Usually, so that's a half an hour or 40 minutes of core or hip mobility, strengthening stuff, or just things like that. Additional exercises that don't really fit in the gym stuff. Then I literally go throw Thursday and lift, which is usually a smaller lift on the Thursday. There's usually a lift on a Friday if I'm doing 4 lifts in a week. And then a throw on a Saturday. And then the Saturday also has a circuit after the throw. So it is quite busy, and there is a lot of training that does get involved with that. And at different times of year, those sessions go up and down. If I'm coming back from having some time off, the throw sessions is definitely more than 4 half turns and 8 throws. But it's not a hell of a lot more. It might be double that at the most. And then at other times of years when I'm not in heavy lifting and I'm freshening up for comps, those gym sessions turn from 2 or 2.5 hours to an hour, and so forth. So I think you can do a lot. You can do a lot with just simple stuff too. Not everything has to be the new gadgets and the best stuff. It can be pretty simple stuff. Like when I'm freshening up, it's very simple. I do some really fast cleans at a 110, 120 power cleans. I do some jump squats. I do some bench throws. I do some core stuff, and that's really about it when I'm freshening up. So it's nice and simple. And I think you can get a lot done with simple stuff. And as I'm sure a lot of people are recognizing at this point in time, they may not have all the gear, but it's amazing what training you can get done.
Yeah, no, that's great. And just kind of along that vein, what are you talked a little bit about what your strength work looks like? What are some of your
Mhm.
staple movements that you're using, through big chunks of the year, and
Yeah.
what do you feel works for you and why on some of those movements?
Yeah, pretty much all the stuff that I do is there's in most gym sessions there's usually some type of deadlift or Olympic lifting. There's some type of bench, so there's some type of press, there's some type of squat, and then there's some type of pull, and then there's usually two rotational things. So that's roughly what my kind of workout follows through the whole year. And things obviously numbers go up and reps go up and down and sideways and so forth. But it's pretty basic stuff. And look, I'm not the strongest guy. I am strong, don't get me wrong, but if you compare me against the other 10 guys in the top 10 guys in the world, I'm probably the eighth or ninth, 10th strongest guy out of that group. So I'm not the strongest, and I know that's not how I throw far. Don't get me wrong. There are some numbers that you need to do that make it easier to throw far, but don't get lost in chasing. Let's say Joe Kovacs. His squatting numbers, right? I can't even do one at what he did 10 at. But that works for Joe. So you've got to kind of early on try and figure out what type of thrower you are and what type of stuff works for you.
Yeah, awesome. What other types of training? You talked a little bit about circuits, but outside
Yeah.
the throwing, the drilling, the lifting, what are other kind of staple types of training in
Yeah.
your program?
So we do a lot of eccentric work, eccentric loading, slow lowering, and so forth through the off season. And also when we're coming into the season, we try and maintain bar speed. So that's by using bar readers on especially jump squats and cleans and presses and stuff. And when we're freshening up, we're trying to get those numbers higher and higher at the same weight, or once we get past a certain meters per second, we move the weight up and so forth. So, look, it's not very nice. Some of the eccentric work it's pretty 5 second lowers and stuff like that is not nice. But a whole part of our sport is being able to take the loading of when your right foot touches down in the middle. How you don't want to slow down. That's one big thing. Like everyone does slow down, but the thing I do better than everyone else is I don't slow down that much. You look at someone like Joe, right? Joe stops pretty much in the middle. There was a study done at London that the shot put of him when he's holding the shot put in the middle of the circle, he's almost a dead stop. When I'm keeping that shot put moving a little bit faster than most people, actually quite a bit faster than most people in the middle. But then again, Joe is he deadlifts 400 kgs. He squatted 320 for 10. He's a different guy than me. And as I said, he's figured out what works for him, and I've figured out what works for me. And you've just got to kind of figure that out and surround yourself with people that you trust and have the knowledge to educate you on those things.
Mm. Awesome. And continuing with some of the training stuff of when did you start working with your current coach, Dale?
Mm-hmm.
And along those lines, how is your relationship with your coaches like molded throughout your career? Obviously you're in a
Yeah.
very different spot now than you were as a 15, 16-year-old guy
Oh,
learning the
completely.
event.
I completely, I think when you're a young kid, you need a lot more guidance. You need a lot more support than when you get older and get into the professional ranks. So I think there's two big people that have had three or four big people that have had a huge influence on my career to date. One, my father. He was a pretty good sportsman in his day, a pretty good rugby player. He did throw a little bit of shot, and he loves to remind me about how much he did throw shot put. And he has won a New Zealand national title. So he was he's always been the guy about the hard work. He's 70 odd years old now, so he's just get in there and get the work done, And he taught me a great work ethic from a young age. And then Ian Beard, my first ever proper coach, taught me the confidence and taught me to love the sport. And then that kind of brings me through to like Angus Ross, my strength conditioner, who we've now been working together for 7 or 8 years, so quite a long time. And he's the guru on pretty much eccentric loading stuff. He's done a lot of work around the world with eccentric loading things and isometric stuff, and works closely with Dan Pfaff on some stuff too. So he's a huge reason why physically I can do what I do. So he's pretty important, and we've been pretty tight the whole time, man. Angus, he's a really good guy, and he's one of those guys who you can always just pick the phone up and chew the fat. And the first thing he does every morning, though, is he goes onto track and field news and makes sure that no one's done something he doesn't know about. So he's a track nuffy too. So he's a really good guy, and a really good guy to have a part of the team. And then I guess Dale, my coach, and me have a funny relationship. We actually started as competitors back in. When did I first throw against Dale? Dale went to the 2012 Olympics for Australia through 2060 something as his PB. So he's a handy shot putter. So he's a pretty good shot putter. And I remember the first time I met Dale was, and he's not like this at all, and Rob can probably testify to this, but when he used to compete, he used to be a lot like Adam Nelson. So, there used to be a lot of, yelling and groaning and, telling officials to, to bugger off and things like that. So he was a very intense guy when he threw. And we trained together a little bit over the kind of 3 or 4 years when he was still throwing and I was competing. So it was, and obviously now he's now moved into coaching me, and the relationship has turned more into a mentor and trying to facilitate and make me throw further, and we're both really enjoying that journey, and it's changed from being mates to now me kind of being guided by him a little bit more, and look, he's not, and over the years he's backed off from coaching a little bit because I can feel more than what he can probably see now. And he's more there for a board to bounce things off and to make sure that I don't go down too many rabbit holes that I don't need to go down.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of questions on YouTube about mental approach and what type of mental training or mental tactics you employ to kind of stay sharp and ready to compete. Whether that ties into how you're adjusting now mentally to kind of, more training and less competition, or just a normal, like how you approach a meet, how you approach preparing for the Olympics or World Champs.
Yeah, so I was very lucky. So I actually forgot to mention that earlier on, but in 2010 when I bombed out, it wasn't because I wasn't physically ready. It was because I mentally wasn't ready. So in 2010, I figured out that at that point in time I needed to start seeing a sports psychologist and to start coming up with ways to handle the nerves, because nerves can affect you in one of two ways. They can affect you positively and negatively. And I think we all can comment on situations where they've been great and they haven't been so great. And so I started work with John Quinn, who's still my sports psychologist, back in 2010. And I was ready to hear it at that point in time. It's sometimes you need to stuff something up to make you realize that you actually need something. And so at that point in time, I was ready for it. I knew that I needed it to help me perform. And so from then on out, it's kind of been a long journey through using a lot of meditation, mindfulness stuff, through apps and just making sure you're kind of touching on it most days. And for example, it can be as simple as like literally sitting here, me closing my eyes right now and trying to figure out what I can hear and where is it coming from and how far away is it and where does the sound stop and then where does the next sound start. And so it's just about trying to bring yourself back to the present time And then once you're in the present time, you're not worrying about what happens if I do this. What happens if I do this? You're starting to go, well, where am I? Oh, actually, I'm here by the circle. I'm here. What am I here to do? Right, I'm here to do these things well. And then if I do these things well, I know that will take care of itself. So that's kind of the basis of what I do. I use a really good app called Smiling Mind that talks you through some meditation stuff, and is really good. And there's tons of different apps out there, and you've just kind of got to find the one app that works well for you. And also another thing about meditation, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, mental preparation is you've got to have an A plan, a B plan, a C plan, a D plan. So if the first thing that usually works doesn't work, you've got to have another plan to go, right, well, I'll use this now and see if that works. And because when you're out in front of, whether it's 100 people or 1,000 people or whatever it is, it can be quite daunting depending on how much this competition means to you. And so that's where that mindfulness and meditation can really help, because it just reminds you why you're there, and you don't get caught up in, what happens if I throw 25 meters? Well, well, hold on, you're already ahead of yourself. And don't get me wrong, you need to think about that stuff, and it's great to think about that stuff sometimes, because otherwise you'd never dream of getting anywhere, right? But you've also, when you're actually trying to achieve it, you've got to bring yourself back to this point in time.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I'll add in a few other things here. I'm sure a few of the boys on the circuit can testify to this. Is that I do try and I talk a lot of shit on the circuit. I try and get in the guys' ears a bit and try play with them a bit. I'm a chatty guy, as I'm sure you've realised over the last 45 minutes, but I'm always trying to talk to someone. And so all the guys on the circuit are always trying to get away from me and trying to, make me talk to another guy, because a lot of the guys don't talk as much as I do.
Yeah. I love it. And kind of moving into some technique stuff, and kind of how you think about the throw, and maybe this is the first question. I'll touch a little bit more on training too. We talked about using off-weight implements a little bit. How do you work that into your training and into what you're doing, on a day-to-day basis from a technical perspective?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because what I do won't work for you. It's just like strength-wise, right? So we generally try and have 2 really high-quality throw sessions a week, which is, Monday's usually one, and Thursday's usually another, when I've had that rest day or light circuit day in the middle. So those are the 2 days where we're really trying to achieve some distance stuff out of it, and we're trying to really get out after it. And so therefore, we're generally throwing a lighter weight implements on those 2 days, whether it's a 7 kg or a 675 or a 65 or whatever it is, because we're trying to move through positions well with a little bit more freedom, a little bit less effort, and just trying to get after a little bit. So those are, as simple as I can put it, those are the 2 days where we throw a lighter implement and we're just trying to get after it most of the time. And then the other days is sometimes when I throw a heavier shot, because I'm trying to feel a position or feel a movement through that position. And the good things about heavy shots is, like, it stays back there. Compared to a 6 kg shot, an 8 kg shot, it ain't going anywhere. So it just makes you take your time a little bit more, and sometimes really work on some positional or movement patterns that you're really trying to work on and nail down, and bring across, of course, to throwing that lighter shot on those days where you're attacking a little bit more aggressively, and if you're feeling well. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about specialization. That was on my question list. But kind of as a follow-up there, you didn't really specialize into the throws and kind of lifting and things until your late teens, early 20s. When do you feel is an appropriate time for, the athletes that maybe they found a real passion for throwing to just kind of let some of the other stuff go and focus in, or should they be making a conscious effort for a while to?
I guess the tricky thing is you got to love what you do. And if I'm not going to tell a kid who's 15 who loves throwing shots not to throw shots, right? So, but you've just got to realize that you've got a long time to do it. You really do. You've got a long time to be professional. You've got a long time to lift weights. And so sometimes not rushing things is the hardest part, especially with young kids. I think if you're still enjoying other sports and you're still enjoying playing with mates and you're still enjoying, shooting hoops or whatever it is, keep doing that stuff for as long as you can. And I really don't think, I think as long as you're dabbling with throwing a bit and lifting a bit and doing other stuff, 19, 20, 21 is not that bad to not be professional at it, because you've got 10 or 15 years to do that, and there is so much time. So I think if you want to start lifting and you want to start doing some of those stuff earlier on, that's fine. That's really fine. But I think the most important thing is not to attack those things and not to chase numbers early on. It's about getting your technique right and the lifts, making sure that everything is working properly. You know how to squat properly. You know how to deadlift properly. But of course, is the hardest thing for a young kid not to slap another 5 on or another 10 on or so forth. So, yeah, I think try and make it fun for as long as you can is my advice. Yeah.
Nice. And can you describe to us what the perfect shot put throw feels like?
No, I can't. I think, and this is something that came from Dale. I can't take credit for it, but I think as you get better at when you're throwing, earlier in the throw that it's a good throw. So when you're a young kid who might have had, just say 1,000 throws, they know that, right here, that feels like it's going to be a good throw. And then if you've been throwing for 5 years, then probably maybe when your right foot touches in the middle, if you're rotating, this feels like it's the right position. This is going to be a good throw. For me, I know at the back of the circle, pretty much, that I've got it right. It's going to be good. And the feeling that I get is just, I'm not a positions guy. I don't think about, hitting this position, hitting that position, being in that position at the front, being that. I think about more movement stuff. So I'm thinking about, when I know I nail it really good, I think about being nice and full out of the back as a full movement. And then, it's an effortless drive, a big drive across, out of the blocks. If you're a sprinter, big drive across the middle of the circle. And then the rest it's just so easy. The whole thing's just so easy, full, and it just goes. And they're the best throws, and they're the throws that we're always trying to chase. And the scary thing is sometimes when you throw really far, it doesn't actually feel that good. And then you go, well, I'll add a little bit more to this, and then it feels even worse, and it goes even shorter. So it's a balancing act sometimes, because not all long throws are pretty and beautiful. That's for sure.
And if you're going to boil down the rotation into three, we'll say arbitrarily 3 keys that
the 7 pillars,
yeah, or 7 pillars. You can always do that. Things that you have to do in your mind, regardless of style, to crush a rotational throw.
You have to do. You have to have a strong left side at the front. Yep, that's from foot to elbow. It has to be strong. It has to be straight. It can't break. And if you've probably got a strong left side, you've probably got level shoulders at the front of the circle when the shot's out there. I think in the middle of the circle, I say I'm not a positions guy, but it's the easiest way to explain this, is that if you stand with your right foot in the middle and your left foot at the front, and you're in your power position, you should drop the shot, and the shot should miss your foot. It should drop probably this, just say a foot width behind your foot in the middle, because you should have most of your weight loaded back on the right side, and it should be stacked nice and in a straight line up. There's not many throwers out there who throw far when they're not stacked. They're not perfectly in line, and you can get away with it sometimes, but very rarely. And I think you've got to have time at the back of the circle. You've got to make sure that you have, whether it's a nice wide sweep or a long drive in the middle, but you've got to give yourself time to build momentum, and it's got to be nice and smooth, and it can't be jerky. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna ask one or two more questions. Then I want to make sure we're not neglecting some of the questions that are coming through on YouTube. If you had to pick one athletic accomplishment that you feel is like your biggest athletic accomplishment, what would it be? Biggest
athletic accomplishment. There's a backstory to this. So for the longest time ever, my coach had a lot of things over me. He's never lost to me in a shot put competition. He had more major medals than me. He had a bigger bench, he had a bigger squat, and so forth. And I think the best day was when I benched more than him. And it was the last thing that he was holding on to. And as soon as I got past it, it's just there was no more. I'd beaten him, I'd thrown further than him, I'd won more major medals, and I'd finally benched more than him. And it was probably the best day. So now he can very rarely give me shit. So that's quite good. Yeah,
that's great. And I know the number of guys that are elite, at the level that you're at in the shot put, there's not many of those guys. It's got to be a tight-knit community. I know you have great relationships with Ryan Whiting, Reese Hoffa, and some others. Like, how is having friendships with those guys and relationships with those guys affected your throwing or helped your throwing or your career?
Oh, look, hugely. And the guys that I've spent the most amount of time with is definitely Ryan and Reese. Reese, obviously, because he lives in Athens, Georgia, and was a huge reason why I actually went there in the first place to train. And Ryan, because me and Ryan are very much the same person, I think, and I think Rob can testify to that. We like talking a bit of shit, and we like having a good time. So I think, and those two guys have done it probably slightly differently than most. Reese obviously has a heel turn in the shot put circle, and people go, "Oh, why'd you do that?" And you actually talk to him, and he goes, "Well, to be honest, because my feet are fat, and they don't actually fit in the right size shoe, so I had to do a heel turn to be able to feel my foot." So little things like that. And Ryan obviously was a huge talent coming out of college, but also is a real student of the sport, and has definitely changed his opinion on the way things can be done. And I think part of that is because he spent some time down here with me, and we do things quite differently than the rest of the world, purely because we haven't had a real history of rotational throwers before Jacko and myself, and we didn't really, because we didn't have the history. We didn't have the history of this is what you need to do to throw far, which is absolute bullshit, because there is so many different ways you can throw far, and I think we're starting to see that not only from us but from the Europeans and also throughout America, that there's so many different ways you can make that ball go.
Awesome. And we've got a couple of people asking on YouTube, what's the one thing or what are a couple of things that you're working on in your throw right now?
So I've been working on the back of the circle for about 10 years, and I'm still working on the back of the circle. I'm still. So at the moment, I'm making sure I finish the turn out of the back. Making sure I finish the fullness, what I call it, and then now I've got to try. At the moment, I'm trying to make it come together with a really nice straight drive across the circle, because I got a little bit lazy in January, February this season with not being nice and full out of the back and then not really accelerating it straight. I was cutting the corner and I was kind of just rolling around a little bit. And so at the moment, I'm really working on getting that feeling back again, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable with nailing it. And yes, so that's kind of what I mean. Like I'm not a positions guy. I'm not trying to get into this position and then get into that position. I'm just trying to feel that movement of being nice and full and wide off the back, and then a really nice aggressive drive straight through the middle of the circle.
Olivia is asking, what advice do you have for coaches? And I'm going to expand that into a double question of also what advice do you have for aspiring elite throwers?
I feel probably more I can comment on the athlete side a little bit more than the coach's side. I understand how hard it is to coach and how many different personalities you have to cater to coach too. So I think probably for a coach is understanding how your athlete kind of works and how they learn is probably the big way, because like in our group we've got Ryan Ballantyne and myself, very much the same kind of person. We like to talk a lot. We like to talk through things a lot. Talk through positions and how we're going to get there and things like that. Or movements. Sorry, not positions. And how we're going to get there and how we're Lauren Bruce, who's a hammer thrower, who's a 68-meter hammer thrower. She is very quiet and doesn't say much at all in her training sessions, and will review the whole training session afterwards, where me and Ryan kind of talk about it during the session. So it's for coaches, I think it's about understanding how the athlete wants to train and how they want their information to them too, and when they want it. And as an athlete, I think the biggest thing for an athlete is you got to dream about what you want to accomplish, and whether it's about winning states or winning national championships or winning Olympic gold, you've got to have a dream. And then once you've got a dream, you can work back from that dream to accomplish it. Because without having something out there to go towards and work towards, it's very hard to figure out why you're doing the sport. So I guess you've got to have that why, and then you've got to be relentless and for chasing that why, and not let anything get in your road.
Awesome. And Rob is spreading rumors that you may be the only elite shot putter that has a golf sponsorship.
That's no rumor. That is true. I'm actually sponsored by TaylorMade, which is pretty cool. And as I said earlier, New Zealand does great with sponsoring its athletes. So there you
go. That's cool. Do you get any time to go and play from time to time?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Look, I probably play at least once a week. Is probably how often I get to play, and not as much as Rob. Rob plays every day out there in Palm Desert. So it's good just to get out there. And both my coach Dale and my strength and conditioner are both very good golfers, and they play a lot too. So that's kind of how I got into it, and it's a good thing to do on the road. Sometimes it's good to get out of the hotel, or good to get out of the Airbnb and spend some time in the sun and shoot some shit and try and play a bit of golf.
We have Al Farashidi of Bates, who's going to present for us in a couple of weeks here, is asking how far can you hit it off the tee?
See, I'm very disappointing off the tee, and Rob can actually testify to this. The driving is not my best part of my game. My best part is definitely my short game. But I'd say how many yards? What would it be? 280, 260 yards, something like that, Rob? Yeah, 280 yards. So.
Awesome. Well, I know you got to get off to lunch at some point here. I really appreciate you taking the time with us. I think your insights have been super helpful for me, and I think I can speak for everybody watching that it's been awesome. And is there any closing comments or thoughts you have to share with us? No pressure there, or any plug for anything coming up?
No, not really. I just two things. Obviously, I think anything like this is really good for the throwing community. And so thanks FMF for sponsoring it and making it happen, because I think more knowledge out there is great. And also to Dan, a mate of mine in Arizona who's had a few health problems, who's watching this, I'd like to just always shout out to him, and hopefully it's all going well out there in Arizona with you, Dan, and you're going all right, mate. So that's really about it from me, mate. And thank you very much for having me on, and hopefully I haven't bored you and your listeners too much about my stories.
No, there's not a boring moment. We really appreciate it. It's been awesome, and I really appreciate your insights. And I think we'll close it off there on the YouTube, and thank you again.
Sweet as, thanks.